what the researchers did was just to use that same character and give it an input for a very long time, and then ask the model, just repeat this character. And what it did was, after some time, when the model repeated just the same character, it suddenly produced a very coherent text, which actually turned out to be an adaptation of the data that it was trained on.
What Zhongshen describes is a real attack on a production AI model. Someone found a way to make that model regurgitate its training by asking it to repeat gibberish. A model doesn't store data, it stores patterns, so we don't think it can be hacked like a traditional server. But with enough probing, those patterns can begin to reveal their source. And in healthcare, that's patient records. In finance, it's transaction history.
And what they realized and what they found is a lot of these models have been trained on what have essentially been private data. So in the world of training these large models, IP and privacy has already been a lot of a concern, right? How can I be sure that the data that I own effectively while I'm browsing, or if I'm using one of these large language models, how can I be sure that the data that I produce or own effectively is not being used to train the next generation of the models?
There is a real tension in AI development. Every model is effectively a compressed representation of its training data. And to a degree, the better data, the better the model. The more specific the data, the more it shapes the output, which is good. But the more it shapes the output, the more recoverable it potentially becomes. And in things like healthcare, that isn't abstract. Personal health identifiers are protected by law. In the UK, NHS operators have to securely run data environments specifically designed to prevent data exfiltration. So it's a trade-off between data security and model accuracy. And that is what Zhongshen and the team at Flower are working to improve.
So when you then go into the space of federated AI, in the case of healthcare, it's very, very particular. There are personal health identifiers, or PHIs, that you absolutely do not want to expose to anyone else. And they have the duty to also trust the analysis that the researcher is doing and verify that the output, there is no exfiltration of this private data out to the public. The vanilla federated AI does not guarantee or privacy is protected in some ways. What you have to add on top of federated AI are these additional privacy enhancing technologies that can firstly make this information anonymous, and also to ensure that no malicious actor can extract any personal information or any identifier information from the predictions of these models. This is extremely, extremely important. There's always a privacy utility trade-off when you train in a model in a private way, right? What I mean by this is, if you increase the amount of privacy that you want, the utility of the model drops, right? Because what you do is you introduce too much noise and your model effectively cannot learn. But if you have too little privacy, or you have just a marginal amount, you might have a very good performance. There's always a trade-off there. Yeah, there is that's this entire there's an entire research committee that is dedicated to effectively red teaming and trying to extract information from these models. So yeah, I would say there's definitely methods for that. What the researchers did was just to use that same character and give it an input for a very long time, and then ask the model, just repeat this character. And what it did was, after some time, when the model repeated just the same character, it suddenly produced a very coherent text, which actually turned out to be an adaptation of the data that it was trained on.
And because of this threat, to be able to access the underlying training data, even if that data is just a pattern inside a model, we'll likely see the emergence of private models, where access to those models are carefully controlled. For healthcare, models trained on patient data, they won't be public models. they'll only be accessible to healthcare professionals and researchers in controlled and monitored environments. Ultimately, the most powerful domain-specific AI won't be visible or available to the general public. There'll just be too much risk.
But in terms of the adoption for Federated AI, I think it's still on a growth stage. It's not a new technology, right? Federated AI is not a new technology. It's been around for more than 5 years now. But the sort of adoption across industries have been on a ramp up. I think the time is very ripe for the first foundational model that is trained in a federated way. There is really all the data in these silos, right? And the infrastructure and the framework is ready for such kind of development. So I think it's only a matter of time that we see some progress, some really tangible progress in that stage, right? So I think the trend I will see that firstly is foundational models trained in a decentralized way. And secondly, a massive acceleration in like greenfield or brownfield rollouts of federated AI solutions. Right? So instead of taking like 1 year to do it, you could drive it down to almost like a month. Boom, everything is up and they're ready to go.